grappling with the text, Philippians chapter 2, starting with verse 25, where Paul talks about Epaphroditus. In fact, Paul was going to send Timothy, but he sends instead Epaphroditus, this friend of the Philippians, the guy who had delivered the gift there. And Paul talks about why and what a precious man he is. In fact, it's with Epaphroditus we can see how the Christian is set in this world to overcome the devil. So let's grapple with the text. Grappling with Philippians chapter 2. Last week we did 19 to 24. Paul says, I was going to send Timothy to you, but I got a better idea. I'm sending Epaphroditus to you. Ha! Who is this guy? Now, Epaphroditus means belonging to Aphrodite. Remember Aphrodite, the old pagan god? This guy must have been very, very Greek, born there in Philippi, and he was from Philippi. It was Epaphroditus who delivered, let's see if we can draw the map, the very precise map. Here's Italy, looks like the boat. And here is Greece. And then here is Turkey, there. So Ephesus is here at the end of this river, Meander River Valley. Here's what, Athens. Here is Philippi, right up here. Here is Rome over here. There was a way, maybe this goes up a little further. There's a way that you could go to Philippi to Rome in a couple of weeks. No. Okay, so Paul is in prison there in Rome, and the Philippians send to Paul, at the hand of Epaphroditus, support. So Epaphroditus comes over to Rome, and then in Rome something happens where he gets sick almost to death. And why, we don't know, but for the sake of the gospel, he gets sick unto death. He then recovers, though, and so Paul's going to send this letter, the whole letter to the Philippians, back to at the hands of Epaphroditus. He's going to deliver it so that they can have joy not only in getting this letter from St. Paul, but also have joy in their brother Epaphroditus who comes back. So he says, I was going to send Timothy, but I supposed it necessary to send you Epaphroditus, my brother, and companion in labor. Labor is how the King James pronounce it, but anyway, labor, and my fellow soldier. What a beautiful word! So that there is a soldiering of being a Christian. There's a trusting in the Lord that puts us amongst the Lord's hosts, and Paul will talk about this especially in Ephesians, which he writes in a similar time, Ephesians chapter 6, where he talks about the armor of God. And the reason why we have that armor is so that we can stand. So Epaphroditus is a fellow soldier along with Paul, but your messenger. They sent him over there with a messenger, and now Paul's going to send him back. I wonder, I got to look up this word messenger. Hold on a minute. I thought it might be angel, but it's not, but it's still beautiful. To send you, and apostolon. So that he's his apostle, the sent one. So that he's their apostle to him. So that he came with news, and now he's going to go back with news. That he ministered to my wants, my needs. For he longed after you all. Now this, I want you to notice how many times we have in this, in the writing of St. Paul, this longing and the longing and a desire and an affection that the pastors and the people had for each other. That when the Lord sets us in the church, He's not setting us there into this sterile sort of thing, but He's setting us to stand by one another into this fellowship, that we have this love and this affection for one another, and this desire to be united together in the Lord's word, that the Lord binds us together in these bonds of love and affection in the church, and that's not to be underappreciated here. So here is Epaphroditus over here in Rome getting sick, and he wants to go back and let the Philippians know that he's doing well. He was full of heaviness because that ye heard that he had been sick. So Epaphroditus is over here sick. He hears that the Philippians hear that he's sick. He wants to let them know, I'm okay, and he's upset because they're upset. For indeed he was sick nigh unto death. Again, we don't know what it was, almost died. But God had mercy on him, and not only on him only, but also on me, lest I should have sorrow upon sorrow. So Paul says, look, you guys were sad that he was sick. I was sad that he was sick. The only one who probably wasn't so sad that he was sick and almost dying was Epaphroditus. Remember, for him, for us, for Paul, to live is Christ, to die is gain. Now look, I just want to point this out, that he gets better because of God's mercy. There is a kind of a practical atheism that infects all of us, or tempts all of us, and we think, well, if I get sick or I get better, that's because of medicine or doctors or whatever. Well, okay, fine, medicine has something to do with it, but all our lives are in the Lord's hands, and it is, if we get sick, if we get better, the Lord is the one who is ruling these things. So so that the good gifts that we receive are received from God's mercy, His undeserved kindness, His affection, His looking at us with not with a scowl, but with kindness. So Paul says, I send him therefore the more carefully, so I said take it easy, so that when you see him again, you may rejoice, and I may be the less sorrowful. So I sent him back to you so that you guys would rejoice in seeing his face. Now Paul remember the Philippians, this letter is the letter of joy, the letter of rejoicing. And we rejoice chiefly in the forgiveness of sins, but we rejoice also in the Lord's mercy shown to us every day in these sorts of things. So when Epaphroditus comes over the hill and they see him, how fantastic. And that their rejoicing makes Paul a little less sorrowful too. So that, remember, we weep with those who weep, but we also joy with those who joy. So that there's a fellowship of emotion in the church. I wonder if we don't talk about that enough. Well, we're talking about it now. And I'm going to be the less sorrowful. Paul says, receive him therefore in the Lord with all gladness. All the gladness you've got, let it spill out because of Epaphroditus. And hold such in reputation. Let him be of a greater, let his name be exalted even more than it was when you sent him. Now, Epaphroditus would have surely had he would have surely had a great reputation with the Christians. After all, they sent him with the offering that they raised to go over to Paul in Rome, so that they would have thought that he would have been trustworthy. They could send him with the money. They wouldn't have to worry about him stealing it and everything else like this. So he already had a great reputation. But even hold him in even higher esteem, because for the work of Christ he was nigh unto death. So for some reason, something that Epaphroditus was doing for the sake of the gospel is why he got sick and why he almost died. We don't know what that was, but Paul says it wasn't just, he didn't just get a cold on the journey. It was in his work for Christ. Now, maybe because he was coming as their messenger and he got sick in the journeys, maybe that was it. Or maybe it had something to do with Paul being in prison, or maybe Epaphroditus was out there preaching in Rome and was beaten or thrown in prison, something like that. We don't exactly know. But he says that he didn't regard his life in order to supply your lack of service towards me, so that they were sending this gift, this ministry, support. They were sending money to Paul, because in those days you had to pay for your own prison time. It's kind of crazy. Anyway, you had to pay for your own prison time. So they were serving Paul and sending it to him, and Epaphroditus didn't even regard his own life, not regarding his life to serve Paul. Now, I want to maybe make the last point on this, having no regard for life. Revelation 12 tells us, and I've been talking about this a lot. I can't remember if it was Grappling or what. So excuse me if we're repeating ourselves. But Revelation 12 tells us that the devil comes down to earth raging because he knows that his time is short. This is, of course, the earth. And the devil has come down to earth raging, knowing that his time is short. In a rage. Here he comes. Like this. And it says, Revelation 12, that the saints resist the devil with three things. With the blood of the Lamb, that's the Lord's Supper. With the word of their testimony, that's the apostolic and prophetic word. And they did not love their lives unto death. You see how the devil holds us captive through a fear of death. That's Hebrews 2, that we're bound by the fear of death. But when we're set free from the fear of death, then we are really set free. That we become impervious to the devil's attacks. So that we know that to live is Christ, to die is gain, and we live therefore in that freedom. And that's the freedom that Epaphroditus had when he didn't regard his life and when he came to support St. Paul. So this is a great example of what this means to live freely and know that there's something greater than death. In fact, I was interviewing Pastor Sean Danzer today on cross defense, and he made this really, really great point. A lot of times people say in the church, they say change or die, as if the obvious choice is that we change. But the Christian always says, well, look, you can't intimidate us by threatening us with death. We'll gladly die, because for us to live is Christ, and so to die is gain. And that makes us gives us the authority to overcome the devil. All right, there you go. Philippians chapter 2. What was it? Verses 25 all the way down to verse 30. Next week, we start chapter 3. Thanks for grappling with me. Thanks for grappling. Don't forget to subscribe. And you get this every week. We put it Monday, Tuesday, whenever the log gets empty. We put in the grappling with the text as we work through Philippians. Glad to have you as part of it. And we have this weekly Wednesday whatnot. It'll probably come out tomorrow. And we're going to give away a free book once a month to the subscribers of that. And it kind of the stuff that I see as I'm reading and studying all these sorts of things that I think you guys would like. I send that out every Wednesday. So people seem to like it. They don't unsubscribe. Maybe they're just too lazy. But anyway, you can subscribe to that. Love to have you on board. Thanks.